Very good evening, and thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Logan's European Outlook. Before we continue with the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. In today's video, it's going to be a little bit of a different one to recent days. We're going to look at the Magellan Oscillation, we're going to look at the polar vortex, and also there may be a little bit of concern starting to grow with regards to this upcoming mild spell, perhaps lingering through the majority of the rest of January. So that would certainly be something that is somewhat slightly going against what I thought. And the reasons for that is because I thought we would see at least through the middle portions of the month before we would see a change and perhaps a little bit of back and forth afterwards. But I've been analysing a couple of things here in the background over the last several days here. There's been a couple of little niggles that I've not been able to shake off, and I'm going to share with you why those are niggles in terms of perhaps a more prolonged spell of mild as we progress towards this weekend and beyond. Now, before we get there, we're likely to see the coldest weather of the winter so far. We've seen minus 13.3 at Loch Skarnak yesterday. We're likely to beat that over the coming nights. Now, daytime temperatures have been kind of slightly on the rise during the course of yesterday. It was a very cold and by far the coldest daytime for the winter so far back on Sunday. Temperature was struggling at the house to get much above -4 through the afternoon. Then it dropped down to -7.2 before gradually recovering during the overnight Sunday and the Monday. We've seen Fyvie Castle, for example, a maximum of -6. We've seen, obviously, Loch Skarnak hit -13.3 after a daytime maximum of -6. We're increasing the snow cover thanks to northerly winds, and we are reinforcing that cold back into the pattern once again. If we look at the current overview chart here, there's an area of low pressure. That's the very system that brought the messy conditions: wind, rain, snow, rising temperature, falling temperature during the course of the weekend across the UK, dropping close to 950s in millibars, and we're going to see some very powerful winds moving into parts of southern Scandinavia, and obviously included in that is Denmark, where the system and the strongest winds on the southern flank will affect the Danish coast through the course of today. But obviously we've got that northerly flow, we've got a nice block and high over Greenland, but that block and high is going to disappear over the next few days, and we may struggle to get that back anytime soon. So, while a lot of the longer range models were holding that block for the majority of the rest of January, there is some concern, by the way, that this cold spell, which is likely to end just beyond the 10th of January, the cold spell may be long forgotten as we rattle through next week and beyond. And it would not surprise me, based on what I'm seeing. Now, I'm not throwing the towel in by any stretch, by the way, in terms of the winter, but this January may end up turning out to be warmer than average. Yeah, that's a big call given what we've seen so far, what we're going to see over the next few days. But watch what happens. So let's have a very quick look at a couple of things here real quick. Magellan Oscillation, it's becoming amplified in phase 1, which is the strongest convection over the western Indian Ocean, but also the Central Pacific. So that can be borderline still cold phases, but as you start to see the amplitude growing in phase 1, and then it rotates through phases 2 and 3, and that's what it's expected according to the ECMWF between day 10 and 15. That's becoming more in the stormy category for the UK and Ireland, but also we may see higher pressure building as cold troughs dig into the eastern half of the United States. Then that trough then kind of starts to push its way into the Atlantic basin and actually pumps the high over the Atlantic towards the UK. And some of the models are kind of holding that ridge, and a mild ridge at that, over Western Europe through well through next week and beyond. So the ECM is showing the amplitude growing in phase 1, and then that rotates through phases 2 and 3. If we look at the GFS ensemble, you can see the same idea. It's in phase essentially in the null phase at the moment, but it comes out phase 8 and 1 right on that kind of border here. And what happens is it quickly goes into phases 1 and 2, and then where it goes after that, quite possible it's going to rotate through phases 3 into 4. But the cooling of the central equatorial Pacific may be one of the reasons behind this, and it's starting to kind of control the atmosphere above. And when you cool the tropical Pacific west of the date line, you're then focusing the warmest waters near the maritime continent, also over the eastern Indian Ocean. That's phase 3 and phases 4, as well as into phases 5 as well. And those are the phases that I've kind of feared, in a sense, really since the beginning of this winter season, that if those waters cool over the west central Pacific, we then focus the warmest waters over the maritime continent and East Indian Ocean. That could hold the Magellan Oscillation in the phases that they promote more in the way of a positive Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation, and a stronger polar vortex as well. Now, let's have a look at the polar vortex, because this is another interesting factor that I've not been able to shake off, unfortunately, and this is that the mean zonal winds, it looks as if it's going to struggle to get below even average as we progress forward here. So if we look at the 10 millibar winds here of the ECMWF, and you can see that we sharply drop those winds from record strong down towards the average. So the thick red line is the climatological average. The thin red line at the top is the record strong mean zonal winds, and the thin red line at the bottom is record weak mean zonal winds. Notice here that thick blue line, which represents the ensemble mean, it stays above the thick red line, so it's staying above average. So therefore, we've got stronger than average mean zonal winds according to the ECMWF model here. Back to the chart here, I want to show you real quick the latest of the GFS model in terms of the stratospheric polar vortex in the 10 millibar level over top of the pole. So this is how it's looking in terms of that. Just bear with us a second here and I'll get the GFS model up real quick. And I know this sounds probably quite negative in terms of cold perspective, but as I've said before, I'm not hiding away from any particular change or whatever. Remember, I've said that we would see ups and downs this winter in terms of mild spells. We've seen that during the majority of December. We've seen a cold start to the January and 2025, and it looks as if it's going to revert back to mild. But one thing I suppose that slightly kind of surprised me to an extent, but not fully, is the fact that it looks as if this mild spell may hold once it gets going this upcoming weekend here. So we'll play through the latest run of the GFS. Very strong warming showing up. It's displacing the polar vortex off the axis into North America, into the North Atlantic here. Continue to play through. So this is the latest run of the model, and it's putting a pretty good attempt at trying to weaken that polar vortex. But notice that the core is remaining fairly symmetric and also cold. Within the core, remember I said to you a day or two ago that it was sending the temperature at the core down to minus 100 Celsius, which is pretty impressive stuff. But notice here that it's fighting off that warming. Yes, it's swinging round. Look, minus 96, and it's almost bang slap over the UK. That is an impressive cold temperature. There's the minus 100 there. Friday, 17th of January here, almost bang slap over Scandinavia. So nacreous clouds, polar stratospheric clouds, is very possible viewing over Iceland, over Scandinavia, and even over the UK. But notice that the PV has done a pretty darn good job at maintaining itself. Then as we continue to play through, it's kind of trying to regroup. Looking at the anomaly here for the same level, 10 millibars. This is the temperature anomalies here, and you can see the very, very strong warming taking place here. But again, the main vortex is holding strong, albeit it's getting displaced off the pole. So it's doing a pretty good job at being able to kind of fight off this pressure that is getting put on the PV as we go right the way through towards the end of the month here. And in fact, we've actually got colder than average temperatures across the majority of the pole. Got slightly warmer than average over North America, but generally speaking, we've got colder than average temperatures up at 10 millibars. Now, the thing that's really been standing out to me, folks, and I'll show you the models in just a second, that kind of backs up what I'm saying here. And this has been an inkling and part of this gut feeling that I've had all along. That, remember, I've said warmer than average winter. I've never bought into the fact that this was going to be an 09-10 winter or anything close to that. But I thought we would see the big swings back and forward. Now let's have a look at the 50 millibar level. This is the lower portion of the stratosphere, which quite often, not always, but quite often reflects what's going on underneath at 500 millibars and below. When you've got a core of the PV centered over between Greenland and Northern Europe here, perhaps Western Asia as well, you've got blocking within the 50 millibar level extended from East Asia across the North Pacific into northwestern North America. That tends to lead to more of a block across the high latitudes, but in the North American side, which then can lead to troughs and colder Arctic air getting driven into eastern North America. But when you've got this cold pool centered at 50 millibars towards northwestern Europe, and you've got this warming and blocking at the same level over Alaska, Canada, and essentially kind of showing troughiness over eastern North America, that tends to lead to a more fired up jet and more of a positive North Atlantic oscillation pattern. And by that I mean negative heights to the north of the UK, positive heights to the south of the UK. And this has been something that has not shifted from the models for the last several weeks. It's never indicated any real mega block, and despite the fact that the ECM, GFS ensemble, even the CFSV2, remember, was showing the cold look to the majority of the month of January. So this, I suppose, over recent days, I've been watching it carefully, not really mentioning an awful lot, wanting to see if the model would continue to hold on to this idea, and it looks as if it's doing that. So let's have a quick look at the GFS model here real quick and look at the upper heights. So this is the 500 millibar heights, and this is looking down over the pole. So keep in mind what I've just showed you with regards to the 50 millibar level, or the lower portion of the stratosphere. This is the here and now, by the way. So this is Monday, so yesterday, 6th of January, blocking over southern Greenland. We've got the twin troughs, eastern North America, western Europe, got that deep low now moving, pulling away from the UK, opening the Arctic door once again. We're going to see cold through the remainder of this week. But keep an eye on what happens with this high pressure, one over the west coast of Canada, the other over southern portions of Scandinavia. As we play through this loop, I get the fact that it's a little bit hard to see. I do apologise for that. But watch here how we've got this little break off, cut off area of low pressure in the northwestern portions of Mexico. That is never a particularly great sign, by the way, for the ripple effect right the way across the northern hemisphere. We're seeing wave breaks develop here over East Asia, North Pacific, into North America. We're starting to see changes taking place, and we're starting to see a deepening of the trough now become extensive out of eastern North America into the central North Atlantic, and higher pressure is going to start to build to the east of this deepening trough. So watch what happens. Continue to play through the loop. Notice here a positive over Iberia, positive over Greenland. As that trough then starts to dumbbell its way out of North America into the North Atlantic, sorry, we start to see this high pressure hook up from southern Greenland and Spain and Portugal. And as this reload of Arctic air gets driven south out of Canada into eastern North America, it almost kind of continues to reinforce that trough off North America into the central Atlantic, and by doing so, it's then reinforcing that high pressure over the UK and Ireland. But this is a mild high, by the way. We're likely to see milder air get mixed in, plus 10 Celsius at 850 as possible, and continue to play through this loop. This is Tuesday, 14th. Next week, we're already in the mild pattern. So this, in a sense, has come quicker than I first thought. Look at now the negatives showing up. Far eastern Russia are right across the top, over the top of the pole into Greenland. We're seeing the heights starting to lower, and then obviously you can see that high continuing to push off North America. So we're still seeing cold weather over eastern North America, but instead of that blocking high being over Greenland, it's now over Western Europe and bang slap over the UK and Ireland. But we've got southwesterly flow with the core of the high centered over France and the trough now extending its way from eastern North America towards the Azores. We're then picking up a southwesterly flow, which is then transporting subtropical air into the UK and Ireland. And when you continue to play through the loop, it's indicating that we're going to continue to see this high pressure dominate western areas of Europe here all the way through the majority of the period. Now, we do start to see a hooking up of the high UK, North Atlantic, Greenland, up into the Arctic region as we move towards Monday, the 20th of January. But this is a long way out, and there's a lot of complicating factors to consider. Look at the trough into North America, actually, underneath that blocking high. So this is going to be the big question mark. High pressure building, likely to hold longer than I thought, into the western side of Europe. What's going on within the upper levels of both lower as well as upper levels of the stratosphere, how that affects the troposphere, all these things we need to watch carefully. And then obviously the Magellan Oscillation is generally on the borderline of still cold phases, but it looks as if it's going to quickly rotate through into phases 1 and 2, possibly eventually into 3 as well. That tends to support more in the way of storminess across Western Europe as well, by the way. And when you've got these cold troughs digging into Eastern North America, that can also reinforce a stronger jet as well. So, yes, it's interesting. It looks as if the mild spell that's arriving at the weekend is going to be quite an abrupt rise in temperature, by the way, to what we're going to see, Wednesday through Friday this week. I'm very curious to see how cold it gets. We may see anywhere between minus 15 and minus 20, especially on Friday morning as high pressure builds in over that snow covered ground. But keep it right here in the channel. Like I said, I'm not throwing in the towel winter, but this is certainly an interesting aspect that is now starting to change as we move towards the weekend coming up. Looks as if the mild spell is going to try and linger on through the majority of next week and beyond. But we'll wait and see what happens. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope you're enjoying the content here 7 days a week. Monday to Saturday, we've got the European Outlook, and obviously the live streams are every Sunday. And they're becoming more popular. Starting more and more people are engaging with the lives as well. So it's really, really good to see that. But thanks for your support as always, and I'll see you next time with more. Bye for now.